Sonic Talk.
Hello, welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 441, recording today on Wednesday, what is the date today? Wednesday, the 16th of March, 2016. This is the show we chat about all things music tech and social music stuff and production, electronic music, all of those kind of things. If you're wondering what the earth this is all about, stay tuned. We've got a great list of panellists, and we're also going to be giving away a copy of Isotope's Ozone 7, which is the sort of de facto bus mastering, file mastering plugin. That'll be coming up a bit later on in the show. And if it's your first time here, I thoroughly recommend you subscribe, particularly if you're watching on YouTube. Just click that button and then you'll get notified every time we put up a video. This is not the only stuff we do. We also do equipment reviews, interviews, and all such things. Anyway, let's get on with the show. So let me see, who have we got here? I'm going to start over here with Dave and Chris from GeForceSoftware.com. These are the guys that make the virtual instruments. Dave is, well, as the letter says, Dave is on the left above the logo and Chris is on the right. They are, in fact, business partners, and they both have substantial synth caves. That's Dave's synth cave. How are you, fellas? That good, eh?
Just fine, thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. Anyway, it's good to have you aboard. Chris has very kindly come along because Chris has some history with Mr. Keith Emerson, who unfortunately sadly passed away, and it would be great to hear some of his tales and stories and memories of that. So stay tuned if that's the sort of thing you're interested in as well. Also, we have Mr. Gaz Williams, who's there in Bristol, producer, bass player, music technologist. How are you, Gaz?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you very much. That Matuki album, which I've been banging on about, that's an album that I produced, is now available to buy. And I'm playing bass on that as well. And I've put a lot of production techniques into this one. I'm really pleased how it's come out. And something that made it right to the end was having this absolute, not one beat or note was copy or pasted. Every single sound only occurs once across the whole album. So I was really pleased about that because it's so easy, isn't it, to patch things and to borrow things here and move things around, and rather than just get people to play it again.
Absolutely, and I've been hearing good things about that. The sound, I heard some rough mixes when I came over the other day, and it sounded really good actually. So well worth checking out.
Hooray! Thank you, big plug. But yeah, why not?
Where'd you find it? Is there a place that you can say quite?
Yeah, Matuki. Well, I think it's on iTunes and Spotify.
Excellent.
Matuki.
Go for it. Right, thank you very much, Gaz, for joining us. And we also have from stateside, Mr. Rich Hilton, who is Nile Rodgers studio guy, as well as playing regularly in the disco touring extravaganza that is Chic. How are you, Rich? Oh, I'll switch you on. That'd be better, wouldn't it? Sorry about that. Try now.
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. It was you, not me this time. No, it was me, not you this time.
I want to say for the record that it was not me this time. That's right.
Yes. For those of you who perhaps don't watch, there has been somebody came up with a Sonic Talk bingo where you every time Rich muted his mic, you take a drink or win a point. It's quite a fun game. But that was me, so you can't attribute that one to.
Take a drink anyway.
Take a drink anyway. Right. I've just got to get my head around this a little bit because I'm slightly it's a bit Anyway, so obviously the big news of the week really is the passing of Mr. Keith Emerson, which is a really kind of bizarre thing because I only at NAMM the other week, a few weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, he was on the Moog booth and doing, because he's had a very, very long association with Moog, of course, and Keith is one. It's easy to use the word legend, but it's very unusual for it to be earned, and I think it would be fair to say that he is definitely one of those legends of the industry. Very kind of well known for the way that he kind of pioneered the whole performance aspect, using live electronics on stage and just basically wigging out, and a whole generation of people, for them he is the kind of iconic keyboard player. So I mean, it's a sad business, but it's, hopefully we'll be able to celebrate him rather than dwell upon his loss, if you see what I mean. I'll start with you, Rich. Actually, Rich, did you? I know. I mean, they did a lot of big arena tours. I mean, very popular in the States in the 70s. I mean, they were the arena band of the 1970s, weren't they? Of that kind of ilk.
Well, the first time of probably, somewhere between 6 and 10 times that I saw them was Thanksgiving, November of 1971 at Madison Square Garden. touring on the freshly released, or just about to be released, Tarkus album. And nobody had ever seen anything like that. Some people in England had seen the Nice. Some people in Europe had seen the Nice. And they may even have made it over here briefly. But it wasn't as noticed. And this stuff was just unbelievable. And, of course, he had a fairly sizable, what looked more or less like a Moog 35 model up there on stage. And it was terrific. It was mind-blowing and game-changing stuff. I kind of object to the people. I don't much like the Hendrix of the keyboard analogy that's sort of been going around online lately. But he was a brilliant person who was a fantastic composer, a great interpreter, a really good ambassador for certain kinds of music into a pop format, and a brilliant musician, synthesist, and seemingly a nice guy. I spent a little bit of time with him, not nearly as much as the people you're going to hear from after I'm done. And he seemed like a really nice man to me, and I'm just very sad for his family and for Mary, and that he was obviously in a sad place in his own life.
Yeah, well, I think I did see, like I say, I saw him. I took a sneaky picture of him between two posters because I was too embarrassed to go up and say hello because he's just too famous, for me anyway. I guess in terms of the whole kind of that era of music, it passed me by a little bit because I was probably just a bit too young and I didn't really kind of get that. I think my first exposure to music was probably more in the punk, from the punk end of the 1970s, rather than the prog rock. And I guess that was something that kind of replaced that whole thing. Gaz, I'm just going to come because I know you're a big fan of prog rock. I mean, they have a major position in kind of performance history, really, and musical history. I mean, because a lot of the stuff that they did, while to my ears isn't necessarily to my taste, you see a lot of the influence elsewhere nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably for the big bands, they're the band who are most locked in time, I think, meaning their music hasn't really been as durable, as some of the other prog stuff. But, there is great tracks in the ELP back catalogue, but I do think you have to tread carefully. But anyway, sorry, that's another point. The thing about those ELP albums and Brain Salad Surgery, I think especially, is the sound, the engineering of the synth sounds just sounds amazing. I mean, the track Toccata of Brain Salad Surgery is the sound of the synthesizers. I think it just, because that was the album that was used to test hi-fis, wasn't it? To demonstrate.
Wow, really?
How good your hi-fi was. Go and listen, in a blaster Toccata or Brain Salad Surgery, really, really loud after hi-fi. I find that really funny. But it is a terrible, sad thing. I mean, for me, I'm more into the nice, and that kind of it was brutal, raw stuff, and I'm a real sucker for Hammond. And I mean, he could really rock the Hammond big time, and
absolutely,
amazing. And it's horrible. I mean, I'm such a fan of like heroic musicianship, and hero musicians. We just don't seem to have them anymore. I love hero. Hooray! Go on. Yeah. Spoil them, boost their egos, make them try and do the most ridiculous things, back them up. That's my. Everyone now is so kind of just put your musician in a box, keep it small, keep it packageable, keep it functional. Keith Emerson's like probably the greatest exponent of the opposite of that. Oh, sad story. Really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, I mean, one of the reasons, hello, Chris, that we have you is you toured with Emerson for quite some time. And you must have. Well, I've heard some of them. I know you've got a lot of tales and stories. I'm just going to play this one thing first, and you can tell me whether it means anything to you, if that's all right. I found this video. This was... There are several things about it that strike me. This is one of the ones that I know really well. Obviously, Fanfare for the Common Man. This is, I think this is Ontario 1977, according, and this is the promo video they obviously did. But the thing that I notice is it looks absolutely bloody freezing. There's snow on the ground, and they've got the Moog modular in there, and I'm just thinking there's no way any of that electronics is going to work at all. And I'm guessing they must have actually been doing the gig in the evening, possibly. Anyway, I'll let you watch a little bit of this, just so that we can... I think that's a Yamaha. Is that a GX or a GS? I forget which.
GX1.
GX1. There's the modular, and they're obviously all freezing their nuts off because they've got the leather bomber jackets and stuff on it. So, my question is, Chris, was that something that you were involved in? Because I don't know the period exactly that you were.
No. Oddly, the time span that I spent with Keith was relatively short, but probably something like 18 months. But it was in his fallow period, a period when Emerson, Lake and Palmer folded, and they had a new band, which was Emerson, Yank and Palmer, with a chap called Robert Berry on bass. And my introduction, much the same as you, the prog era ELP kind of passed me by because I'm a bit young for that, and being sort of more punk oriented, didn't really have an appreciation for his skills. So the first time that I met him, I went down to Seven Oaks and we delivered. I'd taken the GX1 that you saw in the in that clip to his barn studio at his home. And I immediately was struck by just what a lovely chap he was. He was really kind and welcoming, invited us to stay for lunch and said he'd knocked something fresh and lovely up and turned up with beans on toast. He was a genuine, just a fantastic person, but he had a really profound effect on me musically in terms of my appreciation of his skills. I can't say that I was ever particularly a fan, but I recognised instantly that he was a master of his craft. He played Flight of the Bumblebee, but he had a Baldwin grand piano in his studio, and he lay on the piano and played Flight of the Bumblebee backwards.
Wow.
And I'd been completely blasé about ELP. I really didn't know what they did. I didn't care for them particularly. I didn't really care for prog at that time. And I was struck just by his musical ability there and then. It was jaw-dropping to watch. So that was my first experience with him. And then probably 6 months later, the 3 tour, it was Emerson, as I said, Emerson, Carl Palmer and a chap called Robert Berry and a guitar player called Paul Keller. They were rehearsing out in Campbell, which is near Los Gatos, just near San Francisco. And I was on a tour with another band in Japan, and the tech who was working for Keith was getting into all sorts of difficulties. Keith had transitioned between the old analog stuff, and there was a lot of, and some of it was analog, but more digital, couple of digital racks, KX88s, his C3, the Moog 35, I think that's the right model that Rich said, 35, and a Yamaha Grand, the P7. And we toured that for about 6 months around the clubs and theatres of America, taking the grand piano, the Moog,
oh my God,
the Hammond up back stairs, into clubs, into bowling alleys, into all sorts of stuff. It was, a roadie's nightmare. But the rehearsal period was amazing. I got off a plane from Japan, having sort of crisscrossed the world, was completely jet lagged and taken into the studio. And Carl was there practicing his double bass drum solo, shirt off, sweating. Why play one drum when 1,000 will do? That kind of mishmash. And all the record company execs were there, and I kind of wandered into the room looking more like something out of Curiosity Killed the Cat than a prog era band. And Keith spoke to me and said hi, and then Carl came out to the the studio and said to me, looked straight at me, having not met me before, and said, "Did you like that?" And I said, "Not really." And Keith started roaring with laughter, but I felt every other head in the room dip. And I realised I'd obviously said the wrong thing to the wrong person. But it did stand me in good stead eventually. We prepared for the tour and packed everything up and went on tour. But the Moog was really temperamental. It hadn't been serviced for years. And I believe that at one point, well, there was definitely somebody came, but I think it was a chap called Tom Ray from Moog came out and did quite a lot of repair work on it. And it was only used on, you always forget whether it's Redondo or Hoedown, that donkey sound that he uses from the Moog. Wah! Wah! Because it was so temperamental, I sampled it into an emulator so that if the Moog didn't work one night, we had a backup. But yeah, it was an amazing time, and I think both Keith and Carl learnt an awful lot on that tour, and by the end of it, they were really quite humble. You know, we were starting off the show with Fanfare for a Common Man, and that was played on the KX88s with TX-816, 8 of them, I think, in a rack. But yeah, amazing. Actually, I've got one quite interesting story. On the penultimate show, we were somewhere in Florida in a club, and the club had gaming machines, and it had an audience of about 3,000, but the back line was drawing more amps than the back line, and the gaming machines were drawing more amps than was being fed into the building. So the tour management said to the owner, "You'll have to turn the machines off so that we can run the whole show." So that was fine. So we did sound check, lights going, checking everything was fine. Great, everything worked a treat. We get to 9 o'clock when the doors are open, and the promoter's eyes obviously got the better of him, and he saw all these punters walking in, and on went the gaming machines, the change going into them as we waited for the show. We went on the stage, smoke and everything filling the stage. They played about the first 4 bars of Fanfare for Common Man, dun, 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 and the whole power to the building just blew. And I was sitting behind Keith's racks with a torch up to my face, and he came round to the side and he was shouting at me, "Do something, do something." And I said, I'm laughing, because I knew exactly what had happened. There was nothing we could do, and I explained what had happened. So the whole show was then run with a single spotlight on Keith, a single spotlight on Carl, and all the gaming machines off. But it was a nightmare. But yeah, just a genuinely fantastic bloke to work for. He said to me at the end of the tour, he said to me, "You're the happiest bloke I've ever worked with." And I said, "I take that as a real compliment, but I'm not really that happy." And he said, "Why are you laughing then?" I said, "Keith, I'm laughing at you." and he took jokes and, you know, those kind of jibes really well. It was an amazing time and taught me an awful lot about the business and touring, and, you know, when the mighty have fallen. And I didn't really follow their latter return to ELP, but it seemed to be reasonably successful, and obviously there's a great appreciation for their work in the wider music community. So I was really pleased when I saw that they were doing something as ELP again and getting the appreciation that they deserve, because the tour that I did with him was, by an ELP scale, very small, but I think much more trying for him and Carl as artists. So yeah, great times.
Oh, that's fine. So I'm guessing that whole tour, they were beginning to embrace new technologies and so using the Kurzweils and stuff. Did it actually end up just being more stuff as well as the old stuff, or replacing any of it? Because I mean, was that something that he was conscious of? Because I guess the excess of the however many Arctics they had before when they were touring as ELP and what they were dealing with now must have been quite challenging to sort of transfer to.
No, not really. I think the KXs were used in place of the GX1 to get his kind of signature sounds. So that's what the main part of that was. But we still had the B3 Leslie. We were replacing cones on the Leslie nightly because he ran it so hard and so loud. So we had a pair of those. He had an L100, which he threw around the stage. Actually, there is a good story. He was about 40. I remember it was Carl's 40th birthday just before the tour, and we had a party that opened my eyes anyway. But on the tour, just before the tour, Keith came to me and said, "Chris, I'm not really getting any younger, and I'd like to be able to throw this L100 around like I did in my nice days, because we're going to do some nice numbers, and I can still stab it with the knives and do those things." So he said, "Could you have a think of how that could become easier for me?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do something." So off I went to Winchester Hardware, and I bought a base plate for the L100, and I cut it to shape, and I painted it black, and I recessed casters into it and made up a big loom for the output and power for it, so that he could actually wheel it round the stage and then tip it and do it. So it was easy to maneuver. And we were in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places. This is the tap moment. And Keith was throwing this L100 around, and he banged it onto the casters, and downstage it went. Off the front of the stage into the front row of the audience, landed on its back, and just sat about feedback. And I panicked, and I thought, "Oh, I hope it hasn't hit anybody." And he looked at me and went, "Leave it." Eventually it was muted, and we picked it up at the end of the show.
Was that the last time it was used like that?
It was.
I guess if you have a stage with a rake, that could definitely be something very difficult to deal with.
I've got one story I think I can repeat, because it kind of shows also where they were at as human beings at that period. It is amusing, and I don't want to be offensive because I do hold him in high esteem, but I think it's worth telling. We're in a hotel somewhere, and I came down in the morning to get on the bus, and we were going to the gig. And Keith is in the lobby talking to the concierge, who's given him a bag of his laundry. And Keith's completely lost his he's going mad in sort of artist throwing a wobbler mode. And he says, and I sort of walk over and say, "Keith, are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I've just got my dry cleaning, and it cost me $85. I can't remember the exact amount, but it's like $85. And I said, "You could have walked across to the Woolworth over the road and bought socks for the value of $6, 12 pairs for $6. Why did you put them into the dry cleaning?" "I didn't know it was dry cleaning. It's just washing as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not paying $85. He opened the bag and he said to the concierge, "I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to pay half the bill and you can have half the socks." and he turned on his heels and marched out of the hotel, leaving me tittering.
I wonder, did he split them left and right, or was it just purely numerical?
I've no idea what the outcome was, but it did have me in bits at the time.
That does remind me of the touring hotel laundry thing. I probably told this story before. It's not that pertinent, but I had a really nice top that I bought when we first got into record deal world. We went to see a stylist was hired, and we went shopping for the day. Black cab, jumping out. Right, we're going to Kings Road, the garage, all these places. And I bought all these cars. I've still got some of them, and this one was I was particularly fond of. And I checked into this hotel in Sweden. It was really posh. And I thought, oh, brilliant, I need to get this clean because I'll be wearing it non-stop because I really like it. And it came back. It was an Agnes B top, so it was quite designer, it was quite expensive for the time. And it came back and it was about this big. It was just completely ruined it. It was just like, oh, that's that then. So, yeah, beware. He's probably had a lot of experience. I hope they were washed well. It sounds like you had a lot of fun there, though, really. I mean...
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things also about the man, that he was pretty well egoless to the crew and to those around him. He was a really top chap to work for. He rarely got upset about things, and I think he struggled slightly with the transition from synths with knobs on that he understood, and he did understand the modular. When we went into racks with button pushing and assigning program changes via Cyclogics and stuff like that, I think he struggled quite a lot with that and didn't really want to learn the new technology. So he was just Oh, in fact, I've just thought of another story.
Oh, go on then.
If you got to, it's just one more. On the final gig that I did with him, I've got two things that are quite amusing about the man. Or we put. I made a sign, I put it on the front of the Moog that said, "For sale, owner leaving planet." And so he came on for the first number and he saw it, and he was not a fan. And I put a plastic dog shit on his on his Yamaha P7, and he really didn't mind stuff like that. And when he was playing, but lying on the piano, playing it backwards, I pulled his boots off. I mean, he really was up for a laugh. He liked nothing more than having a bit of, you hear artists who get most offended about, the most minor thing. And I understand that they're in the spotlight and there's a certain pressure that comes with that. But Keith was always up, provided it was good-hearted and it wasn't really affecting what he was doing on stage. He was really, a great bloke to be around. Top lad.
Excellent.
Finally, the last time I saw him was he called me in a panic. We'd finished the tour and I was working for somebody else, and he said, "Chris, I'm being interviewed by Keyboard Japan. Could you come down and make sure everything's working?" I said, "Look, I'm in rehearsals with this other band and I don't know if I've got time." And he was really sort of sounded desperate. So I said, "Okay, look, I'll work a way to take a day off and I'll come down." So I drove down to his house in Sevenoaks, got everything working, and he came in and he said, "Oh, well, they're here now and they're going to do photographs for the first hour. That'd be great. And then we'll come into the studio and I'll do some playing and then we can have a chat." Anyway, so he sat on his big motorcycle, had his photo taken. He went into the studio, took some posy photographs of him. No sooner had the photos finished, he said to the interviewer, "Chris will answer all your questions," and just disappeared. So that pretty well the whole interview was me telling them the answers they wanted to hear. And when it was published, sadly I can't read Japanese, but it was all there. So yeah, that was the kind of bloke he was. Just wonderful bloke.
Excellent. I mean, those kind of ELP touring days must have really. I mean, because from the outside, you get the sense that that the desire to solo and the focus. You just imagine there'd be sort of this enormous ego, and it would be an absolute nightmare to work with. The Carl Palmer and what have you would have been. They were constantly clashing. But it sounds like they obviously got on, and it was all right. So that's nice to hear, actually. In a way, I suppose it's the more boring answer, but it's better to know that there was all that goodwill and fun was being had by everybody, and it wasn't like a nightmare like it can often be.
Yeah, it wasn't a nightmare. I think that the circumstances played a large part in that. We're doing quite relatively small stages. Carl had an 8-foot round drum riser, and the first thing that he did every day was to come in and see if Keith was upstaging him. So they always had to be level along the line of the stage. So there was a bit of ego went on. And in fact, Carl didn't speak to me for the first 4 weeks that I worked for them because of my not really comment about his drum solo, not really liking what he did. I was only being honest.
Yes, just saying.
But I think in many ways he respected me for telling the truth, and how that my relationship turned a full 180 in one event. I used to go running from the hotel every morning. Where we were staying in Los Gatos, there was a big reservoir. So every morning I got up and I went for a run. And Carl used to run as well. He was a karate black belt, I think. I think it's karate, but he was certainly a martial arts black belt. So he's a very fit man. But I was only about 25 then, 24, 25 years old. And I'd always exercised and always kept fit. And one day I was running around the reservoir and I saw Carl just in front of me, and I thought, I'm going to have that old fucker.
Beep, he said.
Oh, beg pardon. So as I drew level with him, I looked over at him, morning, and he got a bit of a shock to see who it was. And we ran and I said, do you mind if I run with you? And he said, no, nothing else, no. And we got quarter of a mile back, quarter of a mile away from the hotel, and he looked at me and he said, last one back to the hotel buys dinner tonight. And I was gone. Poof. And I ran up the stairs and I looked over the balcony, this fantastic little hotel that we stayed in, looked off the balcony as Carl came running into the thing, panting and really breathing hard. And he said, fair enough, we're going out for dinner tonight and it's my treat. And that was it. The ice had been broken, and then thereafter, just the same as Keith. Brilliant.
Excellent. Oh, Chris, thank you so much for sharing those stories. That's fantastic. Well, I mean, all jolly good memories to remember the fellow from. So, let's keep it on that way. I guess it's probably time that we should have a word from our sponsor at this point in the proceedings. So, stay tuned, because we'll be announcing the winner of the competition, and also Isotope will be giving away yet another copy of Ozone 7.
Mastering tools in Ozone and Ozone Advanced. Now, the latest isotope innovations in Ozone 7 bring modern and vintage processing to the forefront of the music production experience. Updated for Ozone 7, Ozone's highly regarded maximizer features a brand new frequency-specific IRC4 algorithm that delivers transparent mixes with less pumping and distortion. Use it to smooth out an unwieldy mix, or tame the kick drum peaks without affecting the vocals. The Dynamic EQ, now in both the advanced and standard versions of Ozone, lives and breathes with your audio, giving you more effective control over your sound without coloring your entire mix. Harness the precision of an equalizer and the musical ballistics of a compressor in one integrated processor.
Right, we're going to cut that back in, and I want to say thank you. There seems to be, the audio seems to have dropped out on my ad. I'm going to have to go and get another one of those. That's bizarre. It's like it's degraded or something. There's dropout, MP4 audio dropout. I've never heard of that before. Anyway, we want to say you can win a copy of Isotope's Ozone 7 if you go... Here, you need to be on Twitter. You want to tweet the hashtag Master the Mix as one word and the hashtag Ozone7 to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. And you will be entered automatically to win a copy of Ozone 7. So remember the hashtag Master the Mix and the hashtag Ozone7 to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. There's no spaces in any of those words apart from between the phrases, if that makes it any clearer. Probably not, actually. But we also want to say thank you very much to a winner from last week. We have the winner is called Edward Fist. And he tweeted the hashtags that we asked for, and also added the little comment, I am sitting in a room different from the one you're in now, which seems plainly obvious, really, when you think about it, but it's also a welcome addition because you do have 140 characters to fill, so please feel free to fill them. I want to say thank you very much to Isotope for their continued sponsorship of the show, and very much appreciate them, and don't forget to enter the competition. Right, let's see what's next. We can, let's do this one. This looks fun.
I always loved nature, but it's only when I started making music with nature that I
Diego
realized
does
how
it again.
much there is out there to explore with sounds.
He's basically got a gig doing the soundtrack to, I think it's called Kashi Serial. And this is the sort of making of it. It looks really good fun.
It's mostly about exploring sounds from a different perspective, in a way that hasn't been done before. There was a multiple levels of consideration each individual ingredients. How does it move? How does it sound?
So this was the whole thing that one thing you can tell as soon as there's some advertising dollars, the quality of the filming and the shot just goes up exponentially, doesn't it? All those sort of beautiful slow motion, but it's a great fun piece, and it's from what I gather, a fairly worthy product. I know nothing about cereals or Kashi cereals. Has this aired on TV yet, Rich? Is it something that you've noticed? Do you know if the campaign is live? I don't even know.
I don't know the answer to that question.
No, that's fair enough.
But I sure did enjoy watching it today. I had a blast watching that. I think Diego's a brilliant guy. I really enjoy these little documentaries about how he creates these pieces of music, and I think it's great. Love it.
Absolutely. This is kind of mainstream, isn't it, really, Dave? I mean, as we know, Diego's got many talents, and it's great that there's a gig like this for people who do what are seemingly quite off-the-wall projects, really, aren't they?
Amazing. At first, I didn't realise this was an advert, so I was looking at it going, why is it always sunny in Diego's world? Because it is, isn't it? Even, like in his... And I love all of his tutorial films and stuff like that. It's like, wow, everything just looks really sunny. And then I realised it was an advert because I've seen, particularly the stuff going down and hitting the bell, he's used that to create some Omnisphere sounds.
Gotcha.
And I'd seen that in a kind of tutorial that he'd done. But yeah, brilliant. What can I say?
Great fun. Gaz, it's nice to. I hope it's highly remunerated as well. I would hope so, because his talents are worthy.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, he's just an inspiration, isn't he? I think it's amazing. I don't think there's much more to be said. It's great.
No, that's fair enough. Well, let's move on then. I'm sure you can probably see this. I don't know when it's actually aired because I couldn't find that much information about it. So it's either going to be aired or it must be coming soon if he's actually done the making of video and that's out. So I guess it's going to be on US TV, I would assume, and I don't know. There's another bit of news, actually. Did you see this? That Stevie Wonder's going to perform songs in the Key of Life in London at the Hyde Park, the Hyde Park Festival Series in July, as is Carole King's going to perform Tapestry as well. I don't know is this a new thing, that people performing specific albums of a specific time? Has anyone seen this before, or am I...
Underworld started it, didn't they? Underworld started it last year, didn't they?
Okay.
Last year. All off.
Last year.
Those trendsetters. They did it with Dub No Bass. I want to go and see the Stevie Wonder Songs in the Key of Life because that album just blew me away. I was aware of the kind of seminal three albums, Talking Book, Inner Visions of fulfilling this, and I could never afford Songs in the Key of Life, and I went on a French exchange, and the guy whose house I was staying at, the father, had not only had Songs in the Key of Life, but he also had a quadraphonic sound system. So I just didn't bother going out. I just listened to it day in, day out, non-stop until I'd memorised everything. I still know all the ad-libs for every single track. And when I left, he gave it to me. He said, I think you need this more than me. So yeah, I don't like those kind of big Enormodome gigs, but I've made up my mind I will be on the phone
on the 18th, I think the tickets go on sale.
Yeah, March
So if
18th.
anybody out there beats me to it, you go straight to the top of my death list.
I don't think Stevie Wonder will turn up on the night that Dave's going.
Yeah, big one.
I wonder how authentic, because isn't that one of the Tonto albums? Tonto era albums?
No, this was the GX1, actually, amazingly enough. I mean, Margalef and Cecil were involved with everything up to Jungle Fever. Wow, you see, I really am showing what a nerd I am on this front. So they were involved. In fact, they were quite heavily involved in a lot of stuff, but gradually their credits got less and less and less, which is what I believe led to them kind of splitting. But this was, he refers to it on the sleeve notes as the Yamaha Dream Machine. And when Chris and I went to record the GX1 for the VSM library, all I wanted was the strings from Village Ghetto Land. So I'm ringing up, Gordon Reed beforehand, just going, I just want the Village Ghetto Land strings. You can keep anything else. I'm not worried about Fanfare for the Common Man, any of that stuff. I just want the Village Ghetto Land strings, which turned out to be a preset anyway. So, yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds good. I mean, Rich, I'm sure I've seen that, because some of the 80s acts that are touring at the moment do kind of entire albums in their entirety as well. And I think that kind of retro thing, and it's an interesting concept. I mean, I guess, as we see more and more live performances, because, that's the way that the industry is able to generate money, there are sort of new concepts and new things kind of coming along to spice it all up. And I suppose, as you know, most people tour to promote their new album, which most of the audience are not so interested in anyway, of a band that live a long time.
I don't know very many people who tour to promote their new album anymore.
Right.
You could arguably say that U2 did, but they played a lot, and they played long, and they had that incredible presentation. And just to address Dave's point, every day you spend in a room with Stevie Wonder when he's making music is a good day. Every single day. I've seen him so many times going back to 1973, and it's just never even slightly disappointing. It's always jaw-dropping and amazing and wonderful. And the man opens up his mouth and hits come pouring out. It's quite unbelievable. And his playing and his whole thing, his singing is just amazing. And when he stops singing and plays harmonica and it's the same voice, it's even more amazing, because there aren't too many guys who can do that. There's really a limited number of people who speak the same no matter how they're presenting the melody, whether it's on a horn or in a harmonica or in the voice. And Louis Armstrong could do it. Stevie Wonder could do it. There's only a few people really who've done that well, and Stevie is a marvel.
Have you ever worked in the studio with him? Has there ever been a point where you've been? No. Okay.
Never met him. But I'll pay to see him. Pardon me?
Me and Chris blew him out once.
That was why my comment is that he's going to pay you back by not turning up.
We were supposed to meet at NAMM. It was kind of all set up, and Stevie wants to meet you, and he wants to talk to you about this, that, and the other. And every Sunday, I used to travel up to Santa Monica to eat a certain fish, weirdly enough, mahi-mahi, which you can't get over here, and if you can, it's not very good. So I'd always leave and go up there for lunch, and then I'd come back for the afternoon, and it was kind of get a head together. And Chris was man in the booth in the days when we had a booth, and somebody else manned it for us. And we both went up there, and we had a really nice walk, and it got to like 1 o'clock, and it was like, oh, we're meeting Stevie at 3. I suppose we better leave now. And then we looked at each other and went, nah, we'll have one more coffee. So by the time we got back, he'd waited for like 20 minutes. I'm really sorry, Stevie, about this. If you're listening, I doubt whether you are, but he'd waited for about 20 minutes, and everyone was going mental. Where were you? Stevie waited for like 20 minutes. So, yes.
Ouch. You stood him up.
Well, yeah, but conversely, what happens is that the guys, his entourage go round on a Saturday, I think.
Yeah, I saw him this year at NAMM. Yeah, still massive entourage.
Yeah, and they would plan his trip, you see, around the show. So they would constantly be coming up on the blag, but kind of going, Stevie will come by tomorrow and say hello. You're going to be here about 3 and whatnot. You could almost set the time by what time he can. Anyway, it was one of those moments. That kind of don't meet your hero moment. Because what would I say other than blah, 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 blah. You're brilliant. I love you. I've
Yeah.
got every album you've ever done.
Yeah, I suppose.
Even the one that on the piano with the phone.
Yeah, I just called. Yeah, that's the only low point I can think of. But if there is such,
listen to that in isolation. I had the privilege of listening to him just sing that with a piano, no backing band and everything. And actually, even though I hate to admit it, it's a good song.
Oh sure, yeah. I just remember.
It's a little embarrassing. In fact, I'm glad that we don't go to NAMM anymore, because Dave's one of those people that follows Stevie around singing, I just call. And then, while everyone's playing the tune.
I just called to say, I'm sorry I'm late. I'm not going to make it.
It's really funny, because you can hear him go into, there was the karaoke hall, wasn't it? And he'd go in, and then, everyone would spark up with, I wish and stuff like that. And you just must think, oh, my God, he must just, can we go to the next hall? Now.
Oh, yeah. Gaz, we haven't heard from you for a while. It's a really interesting idea. I mean, one of the questions that I had around this whole topic was, who and what album would you like to see performed live?
Ooh,
Let's say, assuming everybody was still with us.
Talk, Spirit of Eden. Imagine that.
Ooh.
That would be the most amazing thing ever, I think.
Did they play a lot of live gigs?
Not beyond a certain point,
right?
And not of that material, as far as I'm aware. But I mean, for those of you who don't know it, "Spirit of Eden" by Talk, I'll go on. I think it's maybe the greatest album. Certainly, I think the greatest album production of all time. That's in my opinion. And to see that live, I think would just be. I think it would be a sensation. Sensation.
That's a nice idea.
I think What's really nice about that album, I think, is that it came out in 1988, and it's really interesting because it was very ahead of its time. One of the reasons was, I think, Mark Hollis, the frontman, he really got quite sick of the texture of the 80s texture, which people were only still just getting to terms with, and there was a conscious decision on that album to use only things from pre-1967. So all the source sounds had to have that criteria. So you weren't allowed to use anything that was beyond that point in time. But it was actually recorded onto digital tape. So it's a really interesting idea of this vintage front end onto digital recording. But that's back in 1988, So
God, that's an interesting idea. I wonder how they perform that live. I mean, you could actually pull enough instruments together that would be still surviving to actually pull the gig off. I suppose it would all be synths. I know, Rich, is there a particular album, artist combination you'd like to see perform live in its entirety? If it wasn't Stevie Wonder?
I've seen a lot. Most of the things that might have been on my list for that, I've seen multiple times.
Oh, that's great.
But I don't tend to go. I haven't been to many of the album presentation concerts. I've just seen the substantial, majority of a particular album that I loved performed in a more broad concert context by these people. But and this album touring, I know Dave was kidding, but this album touring thing goes back a while. I mean, this goes back a ways. It's more popular now, along with the tribute band world, which is also very popular now, and back then was kind of poo-pooed and frowned upon. It's also we live in a tribute band world where it ain't just Vegas and Atlantic City anymore for the tribute bands. They actually do well. My band in 1978 that did 40 minutes of Steely Dan would be loved today. We were so far ahead of our time.
I just thought, I know what I'd like to see. I'd like to see King Crimson performing either Discipline or Beat.
Apparently, the current version of King Crimson isn't likely to ever touch any of that 1980 band material.
I know. Well, I remember because they were playing in Birmingham when I went, and it was an era that I wasn't so familiar with, and I'd just love to see that. I think Adrian Belew is one of the, if not the best guitarist of that type ever, massively underappreciated. I mean, him and Fripp
great.
together are just mind blowing. And Fripp is it was quite interesting because there was some Fripp. I know we're not talking much about synthesizers. Some of the chat are getting a bit tetchy, but that's the way it goes. But with the whole Bowie thing, there was some interviews with Fripp, and there was somebody recounting an interview that they had, and they got on a train, went down to Taunton. He was in that sort of area of the West Country, and interviewed him. And they said he got off the train, and he had his tape cassette, and Fripp just basically talked at him for 3.5 hours without cessation, and fed him really unusual and unpalatable vegetarian food, at which point the journalist was physically ill, and then sat back on the train and went back, and after just having filled up several C90s worth of Fripp. He's a very unusual guy, and I'm guessing Baloo might be quite an unusual guy as well. It must have been, that stuff just really connects with me. That or Japan, but I haven't seen Japan. I don't think did I see Japan play live? I might have done, actually. I can't remember now. That's a terrible thing. I can't actually remember. I saw most of the band, but obviously Mick's not around anymore, so that wouldn't be likely to happen.
I saw that version of King Crimson a number of times.
Oh.
And from what I understand, Christmas cards are not exactly flying between Adrian and Robert these days.
Yeah, I can understand. I imagine they're very... I imagine Fripp's probably quite a difficult person to get on with. I mean, he's so singular and so kind of... I don't know, yeah. Unusual, shall we say. Eccentric, I think, is what the word I was looking for.
Bill Bruford is somewhat eloquent in his book about Robert, and both a combination of... dread and respect. I think I don't know if they're in equal measure. I can't say for sure if they're in equal measure. What's that, Dave?
Bill's a doctor now.
Dr. Bill.
Yeah, Dr. Bruford. Yeah, no, he really is.
Oh,
he
yeah,
went back to university.
So he had something to fall back on, as his mother would say.
Yeah. In fact, that was an interesting. We had a conversation about this with. Bill's always. We can't really say, can we? But he's always been really careful with money, and actually, he's never had that kind of peaks and troughs of, being in and out of favour that some of the kind of front men have had in these prog bands. Bill's always been very, very consistent, and he was just always very careful with money, wasn't he? Interesting character. Yeah, but congratulations, Bill. Now you're a doctor.
Yes, Dr. Bill. Anyway, I think that's probably enough for today, and thank you very much for your stories, Chris, and also Dave for yours too. So don't forget to check out the GeForce software stuff, because all of that practice that you had, Chris, climbing up and down, lugging huge, heavy electronic instruments has obviously paid off, because you've managed to lug quite a lot of them into your property to sample. So I think that training was obviously clearly formative, shall we say.
I won't be lugging any more about that. I'm too broken.
Yes, well, I know that feeling. But anyway, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Dave. GeForceSoftware.com. Been a pleasure to have you aboard. And Mr. Gaz Williams as well. Thank you for your presence. I know we didn't get a chance to talk to you much, but there was a lot of great material today. So thank you for joining us too.
So just an early plug for the SonicState live show.
Oh yes, I was gonna do that. The SonicState live show.
Yeah,
26th of March.
26th of March.
There's the T-shirt. You can buy them.
Have we got an official site that people can go to see it?
No, I haven't created a subdomain or anything, but
okay.
But I might.
Keep an eye.
Well, I suspect it'll probably just be SonicState.com live /live, where the podcast is. It'll just be a live stream that you can watch it there. I think that's the plan.
That makes sense. But chuck it in your diaries. 26th of. That's putting us on the line now, isn't it, Nick? About the stream.
Well, my part of the streaming technology has been tested, so I'm feeling confident. It's just network, isn't it? We just don't know about network. I mean, if network allowing, so hopefully what we'll probably do is get the venue to switch off their Wi-Fi code for everybody else and just leave it for us. That would be the best thing to do, but we'll see. But yes, it's going to be fun. And of course, we're going to the Source Distribution very kindly donated Presonus PA for us, so we got some nice Presonus AI stuff, a little desk, a pair of active monitors. So it's all going to be kind of good fun, I think. And I'm managing to, incrementing my set by bars a day. So I've just got to keep practicing so that it's not completely unfamiliar, which it has been. But yes, please do come along. 26th of March, and the live stream will be there. And if you've got a ticket, that'll be fab. So
I'll be debuting something really special as well on that show.
Okay. That's what we call a tease. Excellent.
It is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And Rich, thank you very much for joining us as well. I hope you will be able to join us live for that stream, if not before, because obviously we'll be having shows. And thank you very much for joining us too.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here as always.
Great. Okay. Well, that's it for this week. Just to remind you, if you want to join the competition, you need to tweet the hashtag Master the Mix and the hashtag Ozone7 to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. to enter your copy to win a chance to win a copy of Ozone 7. That's what I was trying to get at. And also a couple of things coming up. Superbooth in Berlin. We'll be going to Superbooth in Berlin. That's from the 30th of March, 3 days. And then the following week is Music Messe. So it's a fairly hefty German show schedule, but there will be a lot of content coming through us. So do stay tuned. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.